Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of Operation Navy Watch. I'm Katerina Bandera. This show is going to keep up with everything related to the Royal Canadian Navy. In this episode, we're going to look at some activities that the Navy was involved in this September. We're going to follow 2 Canadian warships on their deployments, analyze the current situation of the Navy submarines, and look back at some September milestones in the Navy. Let's get down to it! The last that stole the show this September was no doubt HMCS Harry DeWolf, Canada's first brand new Arctic and offshore patrol ship. In an interview with CBC News, HMCS Harry DeWolf's commanding officer Corey Gleason said that this is the first time since 1954 that a Royal Canadian Navy warship has completed a full east-to-west transit of the Arctic waterway. HMCS Harry DeWolf has docked in Burrard Pier on October 1st after completing 10,050 nautical miles through the passage. With this trip, HMCS Harry DeWolf has completed its first operational deployment, titled Operation Nanook 2021. The operation included comprehensive activities that exercise Canada's defense and secure our northern regions. HMCS Harry DeWolf has stopped in a few locations along its way, one of them being Arctic Bay in Nunavut, where on August 25 the ship's crew delivered backpacks to the local school children. As the Lookout newspaper reported, the Halifax and Region Military Family and Resource Center collected these backpacks over the year and gave them to the Harry DeWolf crew to deliver to communities during their participation in Operation Nanook. HMCS Goose Bay participated in a similar operation. They donated their backpacks during a port visit to Ecoweed on August 28. HMCS Harry DeWolf has traveled the same path through the Northwest Passage that HMCS Labrador did back in 1954.
Now the passage, Jack, is actually from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It starts down here, Davis Strait, comes up around the top of North America, through the Queen Elizabeth Islands, around Alaska, and down to the Aleutians.
Labrador was the first Canadian warship to navigate the passage.
In just 66 days, the Labrador had literally crushed its way through the famed Northwest Passage, separating Canada and the North Pole.
She arrived at Esquimalt on September 27.
Where it shows land is very often water. Where it shows water is very often land. There's ice everywhere, and that ice is tough and hard to get through.
She then carried on to complete her journey and arrived back to Halifax in November. Although Harry DeWolf has traveled the same path, her journey seemed almost simple, with no real danger of being crushed by ice. It seems almost ironic to have such a powerful, strong vessel navigate the melting world. As Commander Gleason told CBC News, icebreakers normally operate only in icy waters, but this vessel has been designed for a range of conditions, from the dead of winter to anywhere south of the equator. HMCS Harry DeWolf left Vancouver on October 2nd, making a stop at Ogden Point on October 3rd and resting in Esquimalt before continuing back to Halifax. On September 30 this year, Canada observed its first National Truth and Reconciliation Day. The day honors the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families, and communities. To mark the occasion, sailors across Canada engaged in activities with their local Native associations. Maritime Forces Atlantic reported on their Twitter page that members of Canada's defense team wore orange to honor residential school survivors, their families, and communities in support of the reconciliation and healing process. They also raised the Every Child Matters flag simultaneously with the Canadian Fleet Atlantic, standing together with and in honor of residential school survivors. Canadian sailors on the Atlantic coast assisted the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center in raising teepees at the Halifax waterfront. Defense team members were also encouraged to find resources to help them broaden their perspective of the difficult legacy the residential school system left in Canada. For those interested in learning more about the diverse cultures of the Indigenous peoples, the CAF offers an Introduction to Indigenous Cultures course on the Defense Learning Network portal. The Trident newspaper called the course the beginning of an important dialogue among Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. The course is mandatory for all regular force and full-time reserve force members. In other news, HMCS Goose Bay completed their first deployment since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the Atlantic shores. As reported by the Trident staff, after 39 days covering more than 12,000 kilometers, HMCS Goose Bay returned to Halifax on September 10 from a very memorable deployment, one that included participating in Operation Nanook and a namesake community visit to Happy Valley Goose Bay on September 2nd. While in Goose Bay, the ship hosted the town's mayor Wally Anderson and invited councillors and staff of the Happy Valley Goose Bay for tours and a small presentation. This formally strengthened the special relationship that a Royal Canadian Navy ship has with her namesake community. The ship also donated $10,000 to her charity, the Happy Valley Goose Bay SPCA. The donation will help with medical and shelter costs for the animals. While staying in Goose Bay, the ship was open to the public, and residents were invited to visit her upper deck, following all COVID-19 protocols. As we reported earlier in the program, along its journey, HMCS Goose Bay made a stop in Equally to deliver backpacks with school supplies. The ship's company delivered 32 backpacks, while HMCS Harry DeWolf delivered the rest on August 25. The largest naval exercise in Canadian waters since 2019 has come to an end. Cutlass Fury 21 was a Canada-led 10-day biannual exercise off the coast of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. It included training in multi-ship operations, air defense, and anti-submarine warfare. The Canadian Navy also conducted training with 1,500 personnel from 3 allied navies in marine tactical level warfare. According to Maritime Atlantic, training in joint maritime environment enhances cooperation and interoperability with our allies and contributes to operational readiness and ability to respond to any crisis. HMCS Halifax and HMCS Toronto, 2 Canadian ships that participated in Cutlass Fury, conducted maritime interdiction operations on board of HMCS Moncton. The exercises are designed to exercise Canada's Atlantic Fleet, allied navies, and other elements in tactical level warfare. The Canadian Navy continues to deploy sailors on exercises that contribute towards the collective defense of the Atlantics. One such exercise is NATO's Exercise Dynamic Marina, which involves standing forces contributing to NATO's collective defense on permanent basis. According to the commander of the Standing NATO Maritime Group 1, this demonstrates and develops the extensive military capabilities that NATO allies need to keep our nation safe. Other navies that were involved include France, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, and Portugal. The Embassy of Canada in Seoul welcomed HMCS Winnipeg to Korea on September 24th. This is just another example of how Canada contributes to regional maritime security, said the embassy on their Twitter page. The Canadian ship plans to join 6 other navies in a multilateral exercise, which aims to promote security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. The hottest issue of September in the Royal Canadian Navy was the poor state of our submarines. The Macdonald-Laurier Institute published a paper by Jeffrey Collins, a political science professor, titled Deadline 2036, in which Collins examines the future of Canada's submarine fleet. Collins makes a strong argument for updating our submarines, and he does so for 3 very good reasons. Reason number 1, the current fleet of 4 diesel-electric Victoria-class subs will be all 50 years old by the time they're decommissioned. The subs were bought from the UK second-hand in 1998. 50 years is old in human terms, and it's definitely old in submarine terms. Reason number 2, Russian submarines are now active in the Arctic and North Atlantic more than any time since the Cold War. Canada needs new submarines as a way to assert our sovereignty in the Arctic and along our coastline. Surely a new submarine fleet is the way to do it. Reason number 3, Canada does not want to be left behind from major security alliances because of our aging submarine fleet. The latest example is AUKUS, the partnership between Australia, the UK, and the US, in which Australia will obtain nuclear-powered submarines. We should not be left behind, especially considering that we were better allies to the US than Australia. Collins said there's 3 options for purchasing submarines. They can be built domestically under the National Shipbuilding Strategy, they can be an off-the-shelf product that gets Canadianized, or they can be built in collaboration with another country. Whatever Canada decides to do, we need to do it fast. We don't want to be left out of major security alliances because of our incapability, but we also don't want to be left with an aging fleet of submarines that spends more time in repairs than they do in water. September 21, 1996, Her Majesty's Canadian ship Kingston was commissioned to Canada's Atlantic Fleet. HMCS Kingston is the lead ship of its class and is named after the city of Kingston. Its motto, Pro Rege et Grege, which means for sovereign and people. September 23, 1965, HMC submarine Ojibwa, the first Oberon-class submarine to serve in the Royal Canadian Navy, was commissioned at Chatham, UK. She is the first of 3 O-class subs built for the Royal Canadian Navy. Today, Ojibwa can be seen as a museum ship at Port Burwell, Ontario. September 24, 1955, HMCS Sioux returns to Esquimalt, the last Royal Canadian Navy ship to leave Korea. Her return ends the RCN's participation in the Korean War. September 28, 1944, HMCS Bowmanville was commissioned. Bowmanville is the last of the 12 Castle-class corvettes to enter service with the RCN. It was built as a Royal Navy Nunney Castle transferred to Canada before completed. September 28, 1963, HMCS Provider-class operational support ship is commissioned. She is the only ship in her class. September 28, 1966, HMCS Ottawa IV is commissioned at Cornwall, Ontario. She is the last of 12 Halifax-class Canadian patrol frigates to enter the RCN service. And with that, we wrap up our September issue of Operation Navy Watch. If you would like to contribute ideas or topics for discussion, please feel free to reach out on Twitter. I'm Katarina Bandura. Thank you for joining.